of Sudan who were in the camps from Darfur, who were given a solution for cooking their food so that they wouldn't have to go out to gather wood where they could be raped or murdered by the Janjaweed. And I said to him, have you ever heard of solar cookers? He said, no. And so I said, well, I think I might have a solution for you. So I cornered Sandy and I said, Sandy, we have something we can do right now, Sandy Hart and I. She had her computer with her. We got online, we went to the source in France where the solar cookers come from, connected the man from Uganda with the man from France, and within probably 15 minutes, he had a solution for his cooking of the food that he got for his refugee camps. That was, to me, one of the greatest examples of how just simply networking with people around the world, we can do so much in a positive way. And it was such a simple solution, but he didn't know it until we shared that with him.
What's important for us to know about the New Thought delegation to the Parliament of World Religions?
Well, we were a delegation of 350 people. We were one of the largest delegations there, which was very exciting for an organization that is not very well known. But because our spiritual philosophy is one that blesses all people and all paths to God, the work of interfaith is important to us. And we went there not with the purpose of turning everybody's mind to New Thought, but with the purpose of reaching out across the various religious lines to create more relationships and more friendships, more connection. And also, then as a side benefit of that, for the first time ever, we were really recognized worldwide as a viable religious organization. We aren't very old. I mean, our philosophy is very old, but as an organization, we're really quite new, just since the earliest part of the 20th century. So this was a major step for us to have that opportunity. And I think what really rocked everybody's world was when the Agape Choir got up to sing at one of the General Assemblies. We had everybody in that huge auditorium, several thousand people, on their feet, moving to the music. And when I was sitting behind two Buddhist monks who were very quiet when I first sat down and watched them get up and start clapping and swinging to the music, then I was able to, after that, when people said, well, what's New Thought? I'd say, did you see the Agape Choir? That's New Thought. So it was a very exciting time.
Please tell us about peace building, perhaps what it is and also how we can accomplish it.
I like to use the image of people seated in a circle, looking at a globe that's sitting in the middle of the circle, and ask each person in the circle to tell me what they see. One person will see perhaps the United States. Another one might see Europe. Another one might see Russia. Another one might see the middle of the Pacific Ocean. But everyone will be describing the same globe, but from a different perspective. And what I feel that demonstrates and sets up right in the beginning is that part of peace building is learning how to see through the eyes of others. That peace building is a process. It's not instantaneous, but it does require a certain amount of willingness to look at situations from more than one point of view. And in order to do that, I believe one of the very first steps of that is listening, to really hear each other. And it's interesting because the Parliament of the World's Religions was about hearing each other and healing the earth. And I've found the longer I go through life, the more I realize the importance of listening. And I think listening definitely is the first step. Then it's looking for common ground. Where do we have things in common? What can we share in common? My first Sarah meeting, what did we do? We talked about, what's the food that comes from your faith tradition? Well, for somebody who's Jewish, that's pretty easy. You have some fabulous, wonderful dishes that are definitely Jewish dishes and that you have at Passover or you do at other celebration times of the year, gorgeous challah bread. But when you've been brought up kind of like a white bread Protestant, what do you bring to the meeting? The Mormon women at that meeting brought lime jello. They said, we always have this. At every event, we bring lime jello or funeral potatoes. Those were the things they brought. The Muslim women brought wonderful Middle Eastern food and pita bread and hummus and, delicious food. So what do we have in common? How can we find common ground? Well, food's a great way, but there are also other ways. What is it that we all want? What do we want for our children? What do we want for our lives? I believe when we start looking at that, we discover we all want pretty much the same things. We want to be able to live a life of harmony. We want to be able to have sufficient food, clean water, fresh air. We want our children to have a possible future. So I think a lot of peace building is built around what is it we want to experience in life that we can all share together. Our particular spiritual philosophy includes the vision of a world that works for everyone. And so I take that premise when I do the work I do. Will this be something that supports that vision of a world that works for everyone, or is this something limiting and restrictive? If it's something limiting and restrictive, it isn't going to work in the bigger picture of building peace.
Why is it important for you to work with women-centric organizations?
Comfort level, I think, probably more than anything. And because although we as American women have been pretty fortunate, women in many other parts of the world have not. And the Dalai Lama made a statement several years ago that the Western women were the ones to heal the world. I saw that not as a statement of truth in the moment. I saw it as an assignment. He was giving us an assignment. The comfort level is certainly an important part. Also, because in so many parts of the world our voices are not heard. And most of the women's organizations, all of the women's organizations that I belong to, not just most of them, we don't want to be a strident, belligerent, forceful voice, but we want to be a soft voice that can be heard. We also don't want to downplay the men or the importance of men in our lives or in the lives of others, but we want to up-level the women who have not had the great opportunities that we have had. And right now, even in our own country, there are those who are trying to silence the women. Part of that is the fear that we will somehow become too powerful. But our work is not about becoming powerful in that sense. Our work is about empowering and allowing women to emerge, to really fully express who they are, and to have the right to speak for themselves about what they want for their lives. So I think that's probably why. And as a woman, I did grow up in an era where I got turned down for jobs because I was female, or because one person actually told me that he wouldn't hire me because I was too pretty and I'd get married. And so then he wouldn't have an employee. I thought, well, it'd be nice if I got married, but I'm not married now, I need a job. So I have seen that same kind of prejudice against women right here in my own country.
In what ways, other than congregational leadership, have you been of service to your denomination?
I worked on our summer conference a couple of years as a co-chair. We have a wonderful summer conference at Asilomar where about 900 of us gather in the summertime, and it's a week-long program. It's like going to grown-up camp with great speakers and music and workshops and classes. So I did that. I worked on something called the Vision Corps. The Vision Corps is part of our movement. A part of our teaching is that if we get still and really listen to what is God's highest vision for our church, for our community, for our whatever our projects might be, whatever our own goals for ourselves might be, that if we would take time in prayer to really listen, we would be guided to a vision much higher than what our own ego can conjure up or what our own mental thinking process. And so our organization as a whole has a visioning team, and anytime questions come up that are for the entire movement, we're asked to participate in this vision process. So I did that for 4 years. And that was during the time that we were going through a lot of transformation in our movement.
Changed your name.
We changed our name out of that. We moved our headquarters out of that. Yeah, there was a lot that went on. I also served as chair of the Professional Standards Committee for our movement internationally for 2 years, which is where when anyone is brought for review for any particular reason, it has to be a pretty serious reason, then my work was to bring together a panel of people to do an investigation, to listen to all sides of whatever that particular situation was, and from that make determinations as to whether people should remain as ministers or as practitioners or be removed for one reason or another. That was a pretty heavy-duty job to have for a couple of years.
What is the Awakened World Conference?
It is a conference being held in Rome and Florence. Will be in both cities. We have invited world religious leaders from all over the planet to come together to dialogue. It will be a week-long program, but instead of being talking heads or standing up on podiums and giving speeches, this is set up so that we sit with them in circle and we ask dialogue questions. And they then will respond with their answers in circle, but we will also have an opportunity to share and dialogue with them. It is going to look at what many people are viewing as the second axial age. The first axial age being when dogma and dogmatic thinking came into being with religion. The second axial age being as this movement towards spirituality is beginning to grow around the world. More and more people saying, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And so we're looking at that aspect of spirituality. We're also looking at how can we, who are working as religious leaders, begin to come together with one voice, speaking out and saying that we do not any longer want religion used as a reason for war.
What is the first service project you remember being involved in your life?
I think one of the first ones that was really significant to me was when I was in high school. I worked with a volunteer group. I don't even know who the group was, really. It's probably something my parents put me into. But my first summer in high school, I worked in a community clinic in the African American part of town, and they had a well baby clinic. And my job was really just to sign people in, check people in, and get them ready to have their babies weighed and get any shots or anything that they needed. But it was really my first exposure, my first up close encounter with a lot of African American women and their babies. And my next summer, I worked for the Easter Seal Foundation, and I worked in a camp for children who had cerebral palsy. And our job was to work as aides to help the kids get to and from places they needed to go in their wheelchairs, help them eat, just assist them in getting around the camp so they could have fun. And to see the faces of these children just lighting up with joy, some of them deaf, some of them blind, and having CP, that was just also an awakening of how blessed I was to be fully able-bodied, but secondly, how wonderful it was to be able to do something for somebody else.
Was there a moment when you knew service was going to be a major part of your life, an epiphany perhaps? And if so, please describe that for me.
I knew when I was about 10 years old that I wanted to be a minister. And because I was in a Protestant church, a conservative Protestant church, I was told, women can't do that. Why don't you just grow up and be a nice secretary, marry some nice